Let's talk. Let us discuss Constituency Vibes with me, your host, Ricky Alexander, every Wednesday on Sky FM 93.1 from 8 p.m. People centered, community focused, building economic empowerment and resilience in our constituencies. Let's talk. Let us discuss Constituency Vibes with me, your host, Ricky Alexander, every Wednesday on Sky FM 93.1 from 8 p.m.
Good evening, viewers, and welcome to our program this evening, Constituency Vibes. I'm your host, Ricky Alexander. Of course, it is a joy and a pleasure to have you here with us this evening, as always. We start with our house cleaning rules, so we want to make sure that the program is a program that people understand that when you call the program, we want you to call in a certain manner that reflects care and decency, so that we can all share our views and sentiments in a particular manner. Thou shalt not use language that is defamatory, insulting, offensive, or slanderous to the host, guests, and public officials or persons in general. Thou shalt not listen to thyself on the radio, as it may cause feedback or echo. Thou shalt turn your radio down, and you will be able to hear the host through your phone. Thou shalt practice good etiquette and exercise in expressing your point of view. Thou shalt choose to identify the area that thou art calling from. Thou shalt respect the views of other callers without making insults or abuses with reference to previous callers, even though you may disagree with the caller's point of view. And thou shalt be gentle and civil at all times. So once again, listeners, St. Lucians at home and abroad, or people in the diaspora, welcome to Constituency Vibes. This is a program that focuses on this government's holistic approach to sustainable development in a people-centered manner to deliver progress and growth to the people at the various constituencies, constituency by constituency. The government's viewpoint and perspective on local development, economic development at the constituency level involves a process by which public, private, and non-state actors and partners work collectively to create better conditions for economic growth and employment generation. To pursue the purpose is to pursue and to build up economic capacity in the local area, to improve its economic future and the quality of life for all, to create an environment where jobs can be created, and to enhance the development and aesthetics of the local community. So this government is focused on the holistic, sustainable development in a people-centered way to build a new St. Lucia. This is done through a broad philosophy of planned strategic thinking that is designed to fight the wrongs that need resistance and to help the cause that needs assistance, the underlying and overarching philosophy of the United Workers' Party government. This government's development approach is visionary and forward-thinking, with its leadership of the Prime Minister, Honorable Alan Shastney, and his team of dedicated men and women, the Cabinet of Ministers, who view meaningful participatory development as a process of planned change and managed learning. That St. Lucians is a message of hope, a message of resilience, capacity building, and not handouts and dependency, as the government does not believe in giving a man a fish, but rather to teach them how to fish so that they will always have fish. Pain a panyo, that is the approach, giving you the fish so that, teaching you to fish rather. So this is a message of team unity, building capacity, working in the spirit of harmony, care, and respect for others. Our focus, as always, is on the development and transformation of this country throughout the length and breadth of our 238 square miles constituency by constituency. Our political landscape, listeners and viewers, seem to be characterized these days by the darkness of hatred, bitterness, and personal attacks. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. reminds us that We must never succumb to the temptation of hate and bitterness, that darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Hate is just as injurious to the hater as it is to be hated. And that the ultimate measure of this government is not where it stands in times of comfort and convenience, but where it stands in times of challenges and adversity. And in this time of COVID-19 challenges, Jah knows that this government has been working tirelessly to ensure that the interests of the people is at the forefront of bringing support, care, and relief to all St. Lucians, while at the same time staying focused on the development agenda as best as practicable. Clearly, we are speaking of a government that cares. Last night, Prime Minister Alan Shastney, in a unique national collaborative approach, addressed the nation along with the leader of the opposition and the social partners. It was a universal message of love, care, and hope. A message which clearly shares and articulates the government's philosophy based on the power of love versus the rhetoric from the other side, which is consumed by the love of power. It is important to note that love of power is essentially power without love, which usually can be reckless and abusive. The power of love and care reflects power that is best encompassed through love, which is focused on implementing the demands of care, hope, and justice. It is a message that continues to reflect hope and care in the efforts to bring about meaningful and equitable change, not in one single moment which started in June 2016, but in a calculated, focused, and proactive manner designed to build a new St. Lucia and to usher in better and just society. Many St. Lucians who listened to Prime Minister Shastney's address last night felt the broad, overarching message of care and hope of a government that works hard to address head-on the particular and unique challenges of COVID-19 amidst our many challenges of the socio-economic development imperatives of this country. We live in the times of unprecedented changes of the COVID-19 pandemic, which is long and challenging. However, let us take great courage that the honorable arc of collective leadership of Prime Minister Shastney is bent towards caring, equity, and hope. Tonight, we will be highlighting the government's holistic approach to implementation of its initiatives, programs, and policies. And my guest tonight, this evening, is Mrs. Nancy Charles, the Director of Implementation. We'll be talking about the government's implementation agenda and its COVID-19 response. Mrs. Charles, welcome to Constituency Vibes.
Thank you very much, Ricky, for inviting me and for having me. And I have to say, wow, what a preamble.
Thank you very much. We put things into perspective so that people understand what government is doing. And
Certainly we do.
Right. And before we proceed, I just want to start off with a news release from the IDB to put it all into perspective, November 17, 2020. The Inter-American Development Bank, IDB, is devoted to improving lives. It was established in 1959. The IDB is the leading source of long-term financing for economic, social, and institutional development in Latin America and the Caribbean. The IDB also conducts cutting-edge research and provides policy advice, technical assistance, and training to public, the private sector clients throughout the region. Caribbean economies have been urged to invest in infrastructure to secure post-COVID growth. So the experts, the economists are saying this is the way to go. In the face of rising, and the report continues, in the face of rising COVID-19 cases, Caribbean economies need more aggressive financial actions to protect their productive assets and invest in ways to ensure more sustainable growth in the future, according to the new report by the Inter-American Development Bank. While fiscal space is constrained, as a nascent economic recovery emerges, urgent additional resources should be channeled to high productivity infrastructure products to further stimulate growth, the study notes. Okay? It comes at a time when COVID-19 cases are rising worldwide and in most Caribbean countries, negatively impacting on tourism just as it enters its peak season. Countries will need to use sophisticated tools to look at closure and reopening of the economies with decisions based on susceptible, infected, and recovered models, both at source and destination countries. Looking ahead, Caribbean economies face a challenging peak tourism season with double-digit contractions, plus commodity stocks on non-tourist economies of Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, through Suriname and Guyana as well. And they will see a boost in the price of gold. Governments have been on existing programs to ramp up social assistance as well as creating new instruments to address the social crisis, and we will talk about some of the social instruments. Over the last month, the government has rolled out several initiatives geared to providing support, comfort, and relief to all, and we'll talk about a lot of these initiatives that government has done. The report continues, physical space will remain an important constraint, but as nascent economic recovery emerges, additional resources should be channeled to productively boost infrastructure projects to stimulate growth and long-term development. Better roads or airports facilitate the transport of goods and services to market, improve water and power infrastructure, enable industries to operate at low cost and improve the economy's productivity. Over time, this drives higher levels of private investment, incomes, and consumption. Importantly, both economic theory and empirical evidence suggest that countries with relatively less public capital or where the stock of capital is in need of improvement stand to benefit most, according to the report. And Mrs. Charles, we can see that the economists, the experts are saying this is the way to go, this is the direction to go. And I remember C.L.R. James in his book, Beyond the Boundaries, when members opposite and people come with their doom and gloom and the naysayer, like we say in cricket, we just need to hit that over the boundary and hit that for 6.
Well, actually, I was going to suggest that we hit that one for 6 and perhaps make a recommendation, Ricky, if you can post this article online and perhaps post it to the leader of the opposition and members of the opposition, because I'm listening to you reading this, and I'm not sure if the Honorable Prime Minister or even members of his cabinet were privy to that report and they read it, but this is the basic rationale of the Honorable Prime Minister from the onset in terms of COVID, indicating that whilst you would have to provide some sort of an assistance for perhaps your vulnerable groups, you cannot continue to provide that level of financial assistance until eternity or until post-COVID or until we adjust to the new normal. And so his rationale, in keeping with the report you just read, is that we need to ensure that instead of giving the man a fish that you spoke about, but we teach him how to fish. And so we ensure that those projects, prior to COVID, which were already approved, agreed upon, funding was already available for those projects, is to get those projects going as soon as possible to ensure that persons can remain gainfully employed, and so that the economic impact on those families, on those households, on those homes would not be so grievous as if persons were just at home and then you stall all the projects as per the suggestion by the opposition that you should not do any project, you should not continue anything, but just give people a handout. And this has not been the mantra of a United Workers' Party, whether it be the party itself or a United Workers' Party in government. The mantra and the mandate of the United Workers' Party in government has always been to empower people, to allow persons to create their own future, to give them opportunities for gainful employment so that these persons can now be in charge of their own destiny.
And that is visionary. That is forward thinking. And you are the lady in charge of implementation. So take us through what is happening at your office, at your department in that regard.
Well, Ricky, first of all, maybe what I would like to do tonight, and if you can see, I've worked with my documentation. I am following one of the politicians that I look up to a lot, Honorable Guy Joseph, that every time you speak, you see him with his papers, his books, his documentation to substantiate whatever he's speaking about. So perhaps what I wanted to do a little bit tonight to begin the program in terms of our infrastructure project and also the implementation of the government project is to take us back to the beginning as to why we have an implementation unit and where and we're at. And so sometime between 2017 to 2018, the CDB implemented a pilot project with St. Lucia. And the reason they implemented that pilot project is that they recognized over the years that countries continue to borrow funding for various projects, but they had a very low rate of implementation. And so when you come back to look for feedback on those projects, because there was no one or a department specific to ensuring the implementation of those projects, you find that the countries had a very low rate of implementation and they continued to borrow additional funds to complete the project, goes wayward, the projects are not implemented, etc. And so they implemented a pilot project and they contracted a company called Delivery Associates to come into the country. And Delivery Associates, their mandate was specific to looking at implementing key priority projects of the government. And so when they came in, what they did was to meet with the Cabinet of Ministers. They met with our top public servants, permanent secretaries. They needed to find out what was the vision and the mandate of the government, where it is that it wanted to go in the next 2 to 3 years, what is it that they wanted to achieve, and which were the key areas in terms of priority that they wanted to focus on. And then they would have narrowed them from the key areas to specific projects within those key areas, and to have the delivery associates, or what we call the delivery unit, focus on those key projects in ensuring a level of full implementation. So after much discussion, the government came up with 6 priority areas. And those areas were citizen security, healthcare, education, tourism, agriculture, and infrastructure. And so if I may, on each of those,
yes,
I would just expound a little bit what are some of the key areas on each of those priority areas that the government wanted to focus on. So on the citizen security, the key priorities were: 1, to reduce serious crime in St. Lucia and to reduce it by a certain percentage. 2, to reduce the backlog of cases at the criminal court, to reduce the backlog of cases in the forensic lab, and then to process parole applications. So we wanted to have a parole system. On the healthcare, our priority areas were to open the OKEU hospital, to construct the new wing of the St. Jude's Hospital, to launch the National Health Insurance, which we've spoken about, to increase the average immunization rate. And you would think that in this day and age that we did not have a problem with immunization, but we did have an issue with immunization of children between 0 and 5 years old, and so that became a priority. To reduce the percentage of diabetes patients with high fasting blood sugar, and to reduce the percentage of hypertension patients with high blood sugar in St. Lucia. You would recognize that these are key areas in terms of the diabetes. That is something that is crippling the healthcare system in St. Lucia.
Absolutely. Very important, very necessary.
On the education, our priority was to increase the number of students enrolled in the TVET program. And this is the way the world is going in terms of TVET, and ensuring that persons, you have a lot of skills training in addition to their tertiary level education. Our second priority was to increase the CSEC passes, the CSEC pass rates in English and in mathematics. Continuously, St. Lucia and other Caribbean regions continue to perform low in those 2 subject areas. And there was also another priority to increase the proportion of 3 to 4-year-olds attending early childhood education. And so that was also a priority. Under tourism, our priority was to increase our stay-over tourism arrivals, to increase non-accommodation spend per stay-over arrival, because continuously you hear persons say that the tourist is coming, but how is the money being trickled down to ordinary St. Lucians? And so our strategy was to ensure that we increase the amount of money that they spend outside of the hotel where they're staying, but how much money they spend within the communities and the country. We also recognize that in terms of the ferry, persons coming in from Martinique and Dominica, there was a long lag of time for persons to be processed. And it was creating a problem. You had a backlog, you had a lot of people congregating in that area, and that was also a priority in terms of reducing the ferry processing time. Also to reduce the processing time for investor applications. And that went hand in hand with Invest St. Lucia and our business rating in terms of where we're at. And so we wanted to ensure we look at the processes an investor had to go through.
The ease of doing business.
Yes, from application to the point where they finally get the approval to begin construction of their project. It would be amazing to learn that some of those processes would take about 5, 6, 7 months. Hence the reason some people became a little bit apprehensive in hearing the Prime Minister speaking to and mentioning projects that we had started or we wanted to start on the ground, but it took a lot of time between the processing time for them to begin, to go through planning, to get the project approved, to go through all the various phases of applying for the business license, etc. And so we wanted to look at that process and to reduce the time. And we also wanted to increase the number of inbound airlift into St. Lucia. Under agriculture, we wanted to increase the value of our banana exports. So it was not only increasing the exports of bananas, but the added value that the Prime Minister continued to speak about, that what are some of the additional things that we can do with our banana products to add value to it, and not just exporting banana.
And the agro-processing
yes,
facilities.
as much as possible. To increase in value our cocoa exports. I learned throughout those projects that St. Lucia produces one of the highest quality of cocoa / into chocolate. And so St. Lucia is known for that value of cocoa. And how do we take advantage
Very high
of this?
quality cocoa.
Very high quality cocoa. And how do we take advantage of this and to increase the value of the exports of our cocoa?
And if I may add, I'm not sure if St. Lucians known that at Unionville Estate and Soufre by Group Iton, Hershey Chocolates own that.
Oh, really? Okay, well, you see, I'm also learning from you. I hope you don't have an interest in Unionville Estate, Ricky.
Oh, we have a lot of interest there. We have the Gropito here, trail there. We have a lot of things happening in that area. So there's a lot happening within the Soufre business. So there's a lot of interest. Yeah.
And also under agriculture, predial larceny has been an issue for a number of years for farmers. And so we wanted to increase the number of cases being processed and also to reduce the number. Oh, oui. C'est moi ça dit ça créole si c'est mon vle, c'est cause c'est mon ka vini ou ka planter et que ka récolter. Oui. And also as a priority under agriculture, we had the decriminalization of marijuana. So that has always been on the agenda. And under infrastructure, one of the vexing issues for persons traveling from from up north, Grosile, coming down into the city on a morning and also on an afternoon was the time it took. Persons would normally take sometimes about an hour, 45 minutes, 50 minutes, just in traffic between one junction to another to get up there. And so part of our strategy was to reduce the travel time from Rodney Bay to Castries. The reconstruction and rehabilitation of secondary and collector roads. And you would recognize that the road infrastructure in St. Lucia was horrible. The past administration, I'm not even too sure if there were any roads that we can speak about in terms of them doing any work or reconstruction on any of those roads. And so we inherited a country with a terrible road infrastructure. Tertiary road, secondary road, agricultural feeder road, all these roads were in a deplorable state. And so our mandate was to be able to ensure that we could reconstruct a certain percentage of those roads.
And a critical point here, as we said, that the experts, the economists are saying we need to develop our infrastructure, and here you hear from the other side.
Yes.
That we should give people money.
Yes, and not build the roads. They ask can people eat roads. But we'll get to that in terms of whether people can actually eat roads or not. And also another critical project for us was the airport, the Hiranora Airport renovation. So where are we at today in terms of those projects? And I wanted to give you the background so persons understand where some of those priority areas were. Maybe persons would have said they've not heard me mention a few projects that they know we are working on. And prioritizing those projects, Ricky, did not mean that we were not focusing on other projects as well. But it meant that these were the priority projects that the delivery unit would focus on in ensuring that the government can implement successfully and as much as possible to a 100% rate to implement and to ensure that those projects were done. So you can now go on the books and say, we have fully implemented X, Y, and Z, as opposed to when a report is asked perhaps by the bank, where are you at with this project? And we say we're at 5%, we're at 10%, and you look at some of the issues that are affiliated with those projects. These are issues perhaps that you can go through the process and that you can fix easily. But maybe because you had a lot of our public servants and our senior technical people involved in so many different things, it was difficult to get them to focus specifically on those areas. Hence the reason you needed the delivery unit to focus specifically on those areas and to allow perhaps the public servants and the other technical persons to focus on all the other things, because you would appreciate in a ministry and in government, you have 101 things happening. And so you need to ensure that you can oversee everything. So where are we today in terms of 2021, January 2021, on the education? In terms of TVET, we can say our 2020, our target was met. We implemented, and last year we went into Parliament, we got funding for a project called the Human Capital Resiliency Project. And that came into effect on July 28th of last year. And it was officially launched on the 8th of December. So you'll see there's a time frame between when the project came into effect, when we went to Parliament and we actually got the funding, etc., and to be able to implement that TVET project. Under our CSEC project, approximately 2,800 Form 3s and Form 4 students in 13 pilot schools. They receive e-book devices and SD card. And if I can mention today as well, I have very good news for St. Lucia. In addition to those we call them learn books, or we call them e-books. In addition to that, today the NTRC also handed over to the Ministry of Education an additional 4,000 learn books. And so what the learn books are, Ricky, I know the opposition had always been lamenting, and they spoke to Dr. Rigobert when she stood on the platform and spoke about the laptop program. And she told them, ki gain ki adida just buy a laptop. And whilst I agree with the Prime Minister and with the Minister, giving a child a laptop is a very good gift, is a good gesture, but just giving them a laptop with nothing on that laptop, no program, no book, no nothing, it really benefits them very little. And so what we've always said and what we've always communicated with reference to the laptop program is that when we do come into office, we will be ensuring that our students have a device that they can actually use and learn from. And so the ebook we have given the students have approximately 16 of the CSEC syllabus, the books, the actual books. So it means that in the next term, parents may not have to buy physical books for the children, but they would have to buy. It's a cost-cutting measure. And for the children, Ricky, I have a child in Form 4, and my other children as well. I mean, to see the kids going to school with those big, heavy bags, and the bags are so heavy on their back, and then you still see them holding 2 or 3 books, the geography, the science, the mathematics textbooks, they have to hold it in their hands. So now they have all of that on a device. The device is also very interactive. It has tutorial. It allows for them to do virtual tours. For the children doing the sciences, it allows for them perhaps to do some labs. on the device itself. It also allows for monitoring by the teachers in terms of the students on the device, how many hours they spend on that device. It allows them to submit their assignments online, etc. So we're saying that we're not just giving our children a laptop. We're giving our children a learning device that they can actually use, and that there can be that level of interaction between the child and the teacher.
And that so, isn't it very proactive, because the futurist Alvin Toffler speaks about the wave of technology, and it shows clearly that this government is really going into technology, preparing our
way
people.
Ahead.
And that's a major problem we have in the developing countries, where we are saying, we look at Singapore, we look at the Asian tigers, and we are wondering what's happening with our technology. So we're starting from very early to ensure, and I'm sure that we will be rolling some of that into preschools as well. So.
Well, if Minister Rigobert, I can tell you.
And she will be here next Wednesday.
If Minister Rigobert has her way, I can tell you. And if funding was available, you would have had even the preschoolers at this point in time with their learn book. But as with everything, it costs money, and it takes time as well, because it's not an easy thing to just buy the learn book and to get the curriculum and the books there on board.
And I'm sure in a post-COVID environment, we will definitely move towards that.
For sure. So under our health, for example, in terms of immunization, which is one of our goals, we achieved a 53% immunization coverage of the percentage of children between 0 to 5 who were not immunized. Unfortunately, because of COVID coming into play very early last year, it restricted the movement of our nursing officials to be able to complete that exercise. But we're hoping that once we're adjusted to the new normal, or once we've gotten the vaccines and everything has settled a bit, again, we will now review and move on with our immunization exercise. In terms of OKEU, as you would know, and as St. Lucia would know, we did meet our target. We fully operationalized OKEU. OKEU was open. We transitioned into OKEU. And we, subsequent to that, transformed the Old Victoria Hospital into our respiratory clinic to deal specifically with COVID. And so we have a few teething issues. I can tell you in terms of the transition. We've had an engagement with NHI from India. They came in and they did a preliminary assessment, which assisted us in the transition, and they will be coming in for a second phase to assist us in putting our SOPs in place and in settling the place, etc., so that we can have a proper self-sustainable hospital. In terms of our national health insurance, I'm sure you've heard Prime Minister speak about this over and over again. This one has been a bit challenging, but I'm so proud and so pleased to say that we're expecting one phase of the rollout in this financial year. A lot of work had to be done by the ministry. We had a lot of assistance from the World Bank. I think to a certain extent, we did not recognize, we didn't think that it was very difficult. We thought it was something that is easily put into place. But as you got into it, you realize the logistics of it and ensuring that you can have a package that speaks to everyone, etc. It had a lot more. There is
equity.
Yes, there was a lot more work into it.
So that one set of people do not feel that they are disadvantaged.
And that is correct. And that is what differentiates us from the opposition as well. The opposition speaks to universal health care. And if you look at universal healthcare and what it means, it just means that there's healthcare for everyone. But the question has always been asked, well, how do you fund that universal healthcare? Because technically, in St. Lucia, there is universal healthcare because people go to the hospital, they access services. To the best of my knowledge, people are not turned away from any of our two major hospitals because they don't have fund. There is an emergency, they come in, they are treated, and that is why you have a lot of challenges as well in terms of funding, because people access care, but at the end of the day, because financially maybe they are not able, you have a lot of outstanding bills at those hospitals. And that's why when we came into office, in fact, when we were in opposition, we came up with our 5 to stay alive. And one of those from our 5 to stay alive was to ensure that we would have written off the debt of persons who had outstanding hospital bills, both at VH and at St. Jude's Hospital. I'm very proud of this government that we were able to achieve that. We gave a lot of people a clean slate so that they could start afresh, especially persons with chronic illnesses who keep having to access the hospital services over and over again. We give them a clean slate so that they could access healthcare in St. Lucia. So this is something we're very proud of. But in terms of the NHI, as I said, the health insurance, we will be rolling out an aspect of it. Perhaps later during the year, in the first or the second quarter of the year, we'll give out a lot more information in terms of the specifics, and some of the persons would be able to access it in the initial stages, but we're getting there, St. Lucia. In terms of our infrastructure, Rodney Bay, I'm pretty sure the travel time from Rodney Bay to Castries, persons would remember when we instituted certain perhaps things in terms of the shortcuts where the drivers were passing and some of the bottlenecks that was impeding the travel time. A lot of people were inconvenienced. You remember some of the bus drivers were complaining because they wanted to take the shorter route.
Development comes with a little price. We have to be patient and understand.
But I'm very proud to say that the average time was reduced, and consistently we keep monitoring it because we're able to monitor. And approximately it's been reduced, not too much to what we want it to be, but hopefully, Ricky, if you've driven up north with the expansion of the road up towards the mall area, you would see that we're expanding the road into a 4-lane. Hopefully we would be instituting a roundabout, and that would certainly help as well because that area is also a bottleneck. So right now we're down to about 33 minutes, but I'm hoping once that construction of the expansion of the highway is completed, we could bring it down much, much, much lower. And in terms of our roads, as I said to you, I have this thick paper with the number of roads. I think it is, if I did a rough calculation.
And our viewers will get to see.
Oh, yes, a rough calculation in terms of the number of roads that we have. We have about 28 roads in one set and another 40-something roads in another set. So there's quite a lot of road rehabilitation happening in St. Lucia. And I know the opposition doesn't like this, but I can certainly tell you that the average St. Lucian who's been complaining for years about the road infrastructure, whether it be to their home, to their communities, or to work, they do appreciate the effort of the government in constructing those roads. Now, on a little sidebar, I also want to, in our language, big up the Prime Minister for his vision in terms of the funding for the road. So, if I give a little explanation, Prime Minister has always been an advocate in terms of new projects coming on stream and finding their own source of funding. And when we came into government looking at the funding that was available to us in terms of road infrastructure, it meant that there was just a small allocation of maybe about $3 or $4 million per year that you could allocate towards your reconstruction of road. And so the visionary leadership of the Prime Minister was, why don't we implement a road tax? And so that is where we had the road tax coming in. And to use the monies that you would be collecting from the road tax as an advance, so you use it as an advance with the bank to get a loan against that money. And so finance was able to calculate and say, on average, based on the fuel consumption, we're able to collect $20, $30 million a year from that road tax. And so we use that as a guarantee to go to the financial institutions to say, we are guaranteeing you that $1.50 from the road tax that we can collect X amount of money. Can you give us that money in advance to ensure that we can now embark on a total road reconstruction project? And had it not been for that type of leadership and visionary leadership of the Prime Minister, we probably would still be sitting with a small $2, $3, $4 million to construct road, which would just not even scratch the surface.
And that's foresight, indeed.
Definitely, definitely. And so St. Lucians, I want them to understand this is the reason we are able to go around the island, and as you drive around, you can see so many road reconstruction projects happening. It is because of that visionary leadership of the Prime Minister. On the citizen security, we proud to say that last year we conducted our first parole hearing. I know in terms of the news item, I'm not sure if it's 1 or 2 persons who were either convicted of murder, they had served their time, but when the parole board met, they felt that these people met the requirements and to try to help them reintegrate into society. And I think that is the mandate of the parole board, is that you have a lot of persons who have yes, they have committed a crime, but at the end of the day, they have gone for the prison system. They have some level of rehabilitation. Maybe they have not done their time in full, but their behavior and everything else speaks to somebody who may very well easily reintegrate into society. And so you do not want to keep persons like that behind bars. You want to ensure that they've made a mistake and give them another chance at life, give them another chance to go out there. Of course, for the victims of those crimes, it's not easy. And so you would understand perhaps the level of frustration and anger coming out of the families of those. But I think in the final analysis, St. Lucians would appreciate that we are on the right track when it comes to that. And in terms of the selectees, I leave that up to the parole board in terms of how they select it. But I think in principle, we're going in the right track.
And there is precedent throughout the world.
Oh, yes, there is. Oh, yes, there is. In terms of our crime, whilst you would appreciate that you've seen perhaps an increase in terms of the murder. Murder is not the only crime that is committed in St. Lucia. You have rape, you have robberies, you have other types of crime that is categorized. And so we're proud to say that we've also met our target and that we've reduced serious crimes by 18% from the levels of 2018 and 2019. And the forensic lab, which is something that we're really proud about, something that we boast about, we had a huge backlog at the forensic lab in terms of testing waiting. We met our target, and so we were able to reduce the backlog at the forensic lab by 89% in terms of testing required. Under agriculture, I think the Minister of Agriculture has explained, both in our agriculture export and also in our added value with agriculture, we were not able to meet that target as we wanted. We had a number of issues, especially with the Matnik shipment issues. There were a lot of little teething issues in terms of ensuring we get the right bunch size, the right quality, the size of the crate, etc., etc. But the market still remained because a lot of work was done in that regard in terms of the market. So the availability and the market remains. But the requirements that we need to meet in order to be able to ship to those markets have proven to be very challenging. And I'm sure persons see in the news as well, we've had a lot of other teething issues with NFTO and the banana farmers, etc. So we certainly need to try to get our act together in bringing everybody to the table to settle this issue, to see how we can do better in terms of increasing our export and also increasing the added value to our banana product. We also had another project called the 7 Crops Project, where we focus on 7 individual crops that we can produce locally. The intention was to focus on them, produce as much as possible to reduce the importation of those products. So a lot of times people go to the supermarket and they say, all that lettuce we're growing in St. Lucia, you're still importing lettuce, but the numbers from agriculture, and that was post-COVID as well, because based on the consumption from the hotels and from local consumption as well, it showed that we were not producing enough of some of those products, and it still meant that we had to import some of them. So the 7 Crops Project, which was funded by the Taiwanese government, focused on those 7 crops and tried as much as possible to ensure that we can produce a lot more, increase the percentage of our local production so that it will reduce the importation of those products. And I'm proud to say that we did meet our target with the importation of those crops. I think we reduced the importation of those crops by about 38%. And in terms of our cocoa exports, we exceeded our 2020 targets for exports of our cocoa. So I'm very proud to say persons perhaps who are looking for a little bit of a long-term crop, you have available land, etc., maybe they can reach out to the Ministry of Agriculture in terms of how do they participate in that cocoa project, because there is a huge demand, there still is a huge demand for the St. Lucian sweet, excellent quality cocoa.
Indeed.
And finally, under our tourism. Prior to COVID, we had announced that we had increased in every single area in terms of our tourism. We had increased in our stayover arrival, we had increased in our accommodation, we had increased in our airlift, we had even increased in our cruise ship arrivals, etc. But unfortunately, because of COVID, 2020 was not the best year for us. But I'm proud to say that we have rebounded because of the visionary leadership of Prime Minister Chasney and his cabinet, and also the team put in place. We are doing everything we can as much as possible to ensure that the tourism sector remains viable, and at the end of the day, we can continue to boast of a good tourism project. So I just wanted to start off, Ricky, perhaps on that foot, to let St. Lucians know where we are, that your government is working, our projects are going through, we've had successful rates in the implementation of those projects, and we will continue to, as much as possible, ensure that we continue to implement and fully be successful in those projects.
Listeners and viewers, you're on to Constituency Vibes, 93.1 FM. My guest tonight, Mrs. Nancy Charles, Director of Implementation of Government Projects and Initiatives. And we are here on this program, Constituency Vibes, to bring you the information, to let you know what is happening on constituency by constituency. The government is working in your interest and in a holistic manner to build and create a new St. Lucia, a St. Lucia based on equity, based on giving people opportunities, teaching people how to fish so that they will be able to fend for themselves. That is the approach, that is the philosophy, that is the thinking of the United Workers' Party. Of course, we are in an environment, in a COVID environment, and the COVID environment has led to serious economic challenges. And you can see that the government, despite those challenges, the government is working very, very, very hard indeed to ensure that St. Lucians can see that things get better for them under these opportunities. And in that regard, Mrs. Charles, clearly some of the social initiatives, I want you to touch on some of the social initiatives. As a matter of fact, somebody was saying that when they saw the Prime Minister's address, you know, they had forgotten all of the things that had happened. The 1005 from the NIC, and you can touch on some of those initiatives there, and then they realize how much the government has happened. So
I think I saw that post, and it was very interesting as well. And I'm very pleased to say that Prime Minister, in his address last evening, he did a wonderful job in reminding St. Lucians of how proactive his government had been. I can tell you, I'm being in the office of the Prime Minister from December of 2019, around November, December, when there was the first outbreak, and it was recognized that this was going to be a pandemic. Prime Minister Chasney was already proactive, and we started planning. He started putting things in place and started thinking, if this is going to be a pandemic, this would be the potential implications, etc. And so that's why it meant that very early in 2020, we were able to act, we were able to put things in place. And somebody reminded us that what we did during the lockdown in April was to prevent an early wave, because we recognized that whilst we had put a lot of things in place, we still were not at the point where we were ready to have our healthcare system being impacted by this, and so we had the shutdown. And during that time, that was one of the first things that came from the Honorable Prime Minister. He said, if we are going to shut down, we need to care for our most vulnerable, especially because you recognize that persons, there was not a lot of notice given, and mainly because of what we see happening in other countries, and even what we saw happening here in St. Lucia, that level of panic buying where people felt they had to rush to the supermarket. I don't know if you remember the joke, yes, Ricky, where the supermarkets were totally out of toilet paper. And it wasn't only here. And I mean, I saw so many videos of persons overseas fighting over toilet paper, etc. So that was a big joke coming out of the COVID. But really, seriously, we had to ensure that we could take care of people. And so putting together those care packages and being one of the persons on the front line at NEMO in trying to package those things, by the first and the second day, once we started distributing for the communities and the calls started to come out, you recognize that persons were in dire need. You recognize that you had a lot of vulnerable people out there. And the Prime Minister called and said, I know we said we were going to do 10,000 packages, but can we do a few more? Because we're still getting a lot of persons who still are in need and persons who are still calling. And so I don't think we only delivered 10,000, we delivered a lot more. And you also had parliamentarians who from their own pocket went in their constituencies and they also did their own care packages. And coming out of those care packages, we recognized that once we had given away those packages, and we had reopened, you still had a lot of persons because of COVID and because of the various sectors of the economy that was closed, those persons were not able to go out, they were not able to earn a living. And so even prior to that, we were planning what can we do and what type of support can we put in place. And so in terms of the elderly and the differently able persons who were confined to their homes, Prime Minister said, we need to give them food, we need to feed them, and we need to give them a hot meal, we need to give them something to eat. And so I'm very grateful for the SLHTA who stepped up and said, listen, our hotels are closed, but our kitchen is open. We have all the equipment there, we have all the infrastructure for mass production, and so we are willing to help. And so the SLHTA came on board, and we met with some of the farmers, we met with the Agriculture Association. Oh God, I just forgot the name. But we met with them. Marketing board, sorry. We met with them and to ensure that we got a steady supply of locally produced food, because we did not want to give people imported food either. Because
that would boost the economy as well.
For sure that would boost the economy, but we recognize a lot of the farmers were producing, and it's one thing that is very interesting, Ricky. I may do a little sidebar on it in terms of the production of farmers and how it relates to agriculture. I have listened clearly over the years to Minister Ezekiel Joseph, and persons have criticized, indicating that we need to produce more, we need to produce more. But COVID re-emphasized the message that the Minister of Agriculture had always said, that if all our farmers produce to capacity, local consumption outside of the hotel, local consumption will not be able to consume all what the farmers are producing. And that is a fact. And so we certainly need the tourism sector to be able to consume to ensure that our farmers can produce to capacity. And during COVID, we saw that once the hotels were closed and you had only the local market consuming the goods that were produced, you had a glut. You had a lot of food, perishables that were just there. Farmers were producing, it was on the farm, they couldn't harvest, they had no market to sell, etc. And so providing that hot meal eventually provided a steady market for them to be able to supply to the marketing board, and the SLHTA had access to those foods to be able to provide those hot meals.
Reinforcing the linkages within agriculture as well.
That is correct. And then coming out of the hot meal, we recognize, we started by giving them at least 3 meals a day. In terms of going around the island, ensuring you had sufficient vehicle, manpower, we worked with the town and village council. It was proven to be a stretch on the resources of those various constituencies. And so we put together another package where we decided, why don't we now give them the food? We give them a protein as well. And so those persons would now be able to prepare their own meals to their own liking, and perhaps for their own needs as well, because you have people with different dietary needs. And so we worked again with the marketing board, and we delivered, I think in total, maybe over the course of a 3-month period, almost about 12,000 food boxes to people. And so the food boxes contained fruits, fresh fruits and vegetables that was available. It contained ground provisions. And it also contained eggs at times. We gave seasoning peppers and these little things that were being produced. And it also contained a protein. So on a weekly basis, we would give fish only, and the following week would only give chicken. And so you had that type of a rotation happening. St. Lucians were very appreciative of it, I have to tell you. And when we do things like that, it's amazing, Ricky, to see the emotion of the Prime Minister when we do things like that. He's somebody who always cares and always looks for the downtrodden and the vulnerable. So when we were able to execute successfully those programs, I think he was very proud of the team in being able to execute those programs. So
and
that
let me just say, when you speak about the emotion, the compassion of the Prime Minister, I think this is, as you say, very commendable. That is his nature, the kind of person. I think St. Lucians, that's part of our nature of who we are, caring and compassionate people. But on the other side, those from the other side want to use that and to ridicule and to do that kind of negative thing. And so I think St. Lucians are understanding, they are compassionate, they understand that, and they can tell the difference between that kind of positive, caring attitude.
And I think the genuineness of it as well. St. Lucians see that the Prime Minister is genuine. And so at the end of the day, I think a lot of St. Lucians appreciate it, and that's why you have St. Lucians love the Prime Minister so much, because they love his leadership skill, but they love the fact that he's also so down to earth, that he understands what is happening on the ground, and that he always try to ensure there's never a time that the Prime Minister visits either an institution, and I'll just give you a typical example. Prime Minister started a series of tours a couple of weeks ago in terms of going out to the various institutions in terms of COVID to see the impact of COVID on some of the health sector. And he visited the Leclerc Health Center, for example. By the time he got there, he met with the staff and they started sharing some of the issues and their concern. He recognized that ventilation, I don't think they have AC, and there was a need for funds. I mean, in 2 tours, I think the Prime Minister called Minister King, and even from his own pocket, and they were able to put money together, and they purchased funds, standing funds to give to the staff. So that's the kind of Prime Minister that you have. Somebody who goes around, he sees a need. I'm not too sure how his wife is able to cope with him using his personal, but he will use his personal funds and purchase the item, and he will deal with it later. And that is the kind of leadership that you want as well.
And let me add, the Prime Minister likes his local fruits, whether it's guava, whether it's local bread, and tomato, and then, and it's sad that, that the people, the other side making an issue out of all of those things.
Since I've known Alan Shastney, not Prime Minister Shastney, but since I've known Alan Shastney, I don't think there's anybody who's more Lucian than Alan Shastney. The Alan Shastney you see today, who sits by the road and talk with the guys, or who goes and get green guavas, ripe guavas, or sit down and eat a mango, is the Alan Shastney that I've known over the years prior to him being Prime Minister. That's the person that I've known. So at the end of the day, he's no different. He's the same individual. He loves what he loves. I mean, our joke at the office is KFC. If we've been working long hours or something, and then we say, oh gosh, we're hungry, what are we going to eat? Everybody just say KFC, because that's one of his favorite things to do, is to just, eat some KFC. So he's just very real and genuine.
But on a serious note, you want to think in this time when we need serious leadership and serious vision, and you want to talk about bread and guava and that kind of stuff.
I think it's rather unfortunate that the opposition has not taken the opportunity to step up to the plate. And it's not that I'm giving advice to the opposition, because I'm a staunch member and supporter of the United Workers' Party, but I think St. Lucians expect a bit more from the opposition and also from the leader of the opposition. So if you have an opportunity as the leader of an opposition to address a gathering of your members, I don't know that you want to start and you want to speak to them about whether you're not eating guava or whether you're not going and shop in the supermarket, and things like that. That should not be the topic of conversation to be talking to your members about. You should be talking about the substantive issues. So if I have any advice to the opposition, my best advice would be to step up to the plate.
Did you think that last night, I must commend the Prime Minister in a very unique approach in terms of all the social partners and the stakeholders as part of a team to really address the serious issues of COVID. The leader of the opposition had a good opportunity to address the nation in that regard. Did you think he stepped up to that opportunity and stepped up?
I have to say I was very disappointed, Ricky. It's one thing that the team members know. One of my critical jobs is to ensure that when the opposition speak, that I listen and note down some of the things that they're saying to ensure that we can clarify, correct, or if there's anything that needs to take into consideration that you do. So I always do note whether he's having an address to the nation like he did a couple of days ago, or whether there's a press briefing, or even last night. And I think the leader of the opposition really failed St. Lucians last night. He was given a unique opportunity. So if you look at the trend of everybody who spoke, all the private sector agencies who spoke. It was more or less a rallying call to St. Lucians to say, hey, we're at the point where what is happening transcends politics, it transcends UWP, it transcends labor, it transcends independent. It calls for everybody to come together. And so I think for me and for an ordinary St. Lucian, you would have wanted your leader of the opposition to come out and to speak to St. Lucians in terms of coming together, observing the protocol, supporting the new measures that have been announced by the Prime Minister. Or if you do not support it, that's okay as well, but give your rationale as to why you don't support it as well. But I think his statements in terms of looking at the politics of it, his statement in terms of the equitable distribution of the vaccine that he spoke about, for me, I was like, oh my God, because the night before, the news, the media houses had carried a story with the principal nursing officer from the Ministry of Health indicating the breakdown of the vaccination program, who the priority persons would be, etc., etc. And it was very visual. It explained who would be given first priority in terms of persons with pre-existing condition, in terms of our frontliners, etc., etc. And I thought that as leader of the opposition, you also need to be monitoring the news to know what is happening in the country, because you want to be the leader. And for me, that was a dismal failure in him not even knowing those basic things and making those statements that he made about transcending politics for a vaccine. This has never been, and I don't think the public servants would even tolerate something like that. So he certainly did not step up to the plate. He certainly failed even the supporters of the Labour Party. I have quite a few Labour Party people who are my friends. We're across the board. So some of them would message me and say, oh, no, you know, that kind of a thing. So for sure, I know a lot of St. Lucians were disappointed that the leader of the opposition did not step up to the plate in terms of rallying and bringing St. Lucians together, because at this point in time where we're at, we need everybody to be together.
In terms of the vaccine, St. Lucians would probably want to know if you have any idea how soon we're going to get the vaccine.
Well, as the Prime Minister indicated, initially we were scheduled to get the vaccine sometime in March, but we've gotten word from PAHO that we will be getting a batch of about 74,400 vaccines mid to ending of February. So we will be getting it early. And I think hence the reason the Ministry of Health rolled out preliminary plans to the media, indicating this is what the plan is for the rollout of the vaccine. What I do want to say to St. Lucia Ricky as well is very interesting. I remember earlier on during the pandemic, sometime last year, Mr. St. Catherine indicated that he had done some sort of a survey, and there was a huge percentage of almost 50% of St. Lucians who either did not believe or did not care to take the vaccine. I'm hoping that St. Lucians would do a little bit more research now. There's a lot of information available on the internet. There's the good, the bad, and the ugly. We need to be able to filter it ourselves and to make a determination, because as the Prime Minister indicated, the vaccine is free, but it's also on a voluntary basis. You wouldn't be able to force people. But I think St. Lucians, what I would appeal to St. Lucians is that in terms of whether you decide to take the vaccine or not, think not only of yourself, but perhaps think of your family, think of your parents, your grandparents, think of St. Lucia in total, and when you're making that decision. So get the information, but also ensure that it's not only about you or me, but it's about your co-workers, it's about your colleagues, it's about your family members, it's about St. Lucia in general, and before you make the decision whether you choose to take the vaccine or not. And person have asked me, will you take the vaccine? I would like to be the first person on the line to take the vaccine, Ricky. I can certainly tell you that. However, I am not part of the priority. I'm not part of the first batch. I do not feel in any of those categories, so I may have to wait my turn, but I would like to encourage St. Lucians as much as possible to take the vaccine once it becomes available.
Listeners, viewers, you're on to Constituency Vibes, 93.1 FM, and we're on GDV TV, Flow 115. And my guest tonight is Mrs. Nancy Charles, Director of Implementation for the Government of St. Lucia. And Constituency Vibes is where we give you all that information to let you know what is happening. No pa vlo koute shal, gwamundi pa koute shal. Shal kadi an shay bagay ki pa vwe. We're giving you the facts, we're giving you the information so that you are informed and that you clearly understand what is happening in St. Lucia. Of course, to let you know the extent of the work that the government is doing throughout the length and breadth of St. Lucia. You've heard all the various programs, and of course you'll be seeing the clippings of the various programs. We'll be rolling that out. We will be opening our lines right about now, 456-0931. Feel free to call in and to share your views. We want to tell you also that we want you to respect other people's views. This is not a program where you call and give mépris and that kind of stuff. I mean, you may not agree. It's a democracy. You have your right to share your point of view, but we want to do that in a very cordial and a very peaceful and wonderful manner. And of course, I have to go back to the message last night. I think it is very unique, that kind of approach. People usually expect the Prime Minister alone to come out and just share. So can us be able to guide that policy, that approach?
I think sometimes, what better way to say, desperate times call for desperate measures. It was a time for, whilst we've always had the support of our private sector agencies, it was...
Kindly hold a minute, caller.
It was time for the public perhaps to hear from also those private sector agencies in terms of supporting the message and asking St. Lucians to
just hold
come
a second, caller.
At this point in time. And I think it went very well. I do want to say thank you very much to all those private sector agencies who stepped up to the plate and to give their messages of solidarity in trying to rally St. Lucia to come together at this critical time.
Thank you very much for holding, caller. Welcome to Constituency Vibes.
Yeah, thank you, Ricky. How are you doing?
I am good.
All right, Nancy, pleasure to see you explaining on the Constituency Vibes to the whole nation. So, I have a major concern. My major concern, besides all the things that on the project and whatever the government has implemented, my major concern is about the hospital in the South, St. Jude Hospital. I know, well, I don't want to explain for you, because you came and you explained all the difficulties that the government experienced during COVID. But for what I'm seeing and experiencing, along with other residents or nationals of St. Lucia, the COVID situation has created some difficulty for the government to really establish more with St. Jude's. But I still want to say that we need to do a very concerted effort to get St. Jude's done before elections. And I'm saying this because I'm somebody from the South, and I know what the echo of the people from the South is. I mean, St. Jude's is very dear to these people. And we have the Schwarzer, the Soufre seats that, these people voted UWP, and they're looking towards the completion of the St. Jude Hospital. So I want to hear, at least from the government, that this hospital will be completed before during elections is called. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, caller.
Thank you very much, caller, for your feedback. I have to say to you that St. Jude's has never been about elections for the United Workers' Party. St. Jude's, if it was about election, we would have gone there, completed the monstrosity, that's what we call it, that was there, and say, hey, we've completed the hospital, look, you can go into it. St. Jude's for us has always been about the people of St. Lucia, especially the people in the South. The Prime Minister has indicated continuously that he believes that the people in the South deserve better and we deserve the best. And it's always about the health care of the people in the South. And so when we went into St. Jude's and we saw what was happening there, when we did the audit report, you would remember, Colin, that is something I want us to remember because sometimes we forget a little quickly. We showed you the pictures. We had the media houses coming in there. We showed you what was happening and what it is that they called a project. We also spoke to the audit report that we did in terms of St. Jude's, looking at the various aspects of the hospital, and it really was not fit for it to be a hospital. And so the government deliberated You had to make either a political decision or you had to make a decision in the best interest of the people of St. Lucia. And I'm proud to say that perhaps we will get criticized for it, but I'm proud to say that as an administration, we made a decision in the best interest of the people of St. Lucia. And we said, this cannot pass. We cannot approve or agree to this type of structure. It will not give you international health care. It will not pass any of the standards, and we cannot give this to the people of the South just to say we give them a hospital. So, Carla, I can assure you that when the hospital is completed, it will be a hospital worthy of international standard. It will be a hospital that people of St. Lucia, especially in the South, will be proud of, and it will be a hospital that will be providing affordable, quality health care as per the vision of the United Workers' Party.
And let me just add that the government recognized that the wealth of a nation is the health of a nation. So we must do it right, and we must definitely do it properly.
I think so, because what we recognize as well, Ricky, is that administration prior to the Labour Party, there was a UWP administration, and the plans for that for the hospital under the Stephenson King administration was never to reconstruct the entire hospital. It was to reconstruct the wing of the hospital that was damaged and other aspects of that hospital that was damaged. And so when the Labour Party came into office in 2011, they found an 80% facility in terms of that wing. It was the Labour Party administration who decided that they didn't want to give, quote unquote, that wing and keep the existing structure. And so they decided they wanted to give the South a bigger, better facility. But unfortunately, they didn't have the wherewithal. Maybe if they had a delivery unit, Ricky, who was specific to this project, they would have had more oversight of that project and ensuring that the millions of dollars, the hundreds of millions of dollars that was spent on that project was being spent to good use, and we would not have had such a wastage from the Labour Party. But when we came into office, we just could not, in all good conscience, continue with the project as is. And I'll give you a typical example. There was this unit that was set aside for the dialysis unit, for example. And we said, okay, well, why don't we move into that unit and remove dialysis from the stadium? But when we looked at the structural integrity of the dialysis unit, that building, the entire thing was cracked. And the consultant said to us, listen, you can't put people, my son is on dialysis. So you can't put people who are so frail. And being on dialysis is a life or death situation, Ricky. You would appreciate, because what it does is it takes out the blood out of your body, it cleanses it and put it back in. So at any point in time, this individual is lacking a certain percentage of blood in their body. So this is very critical. And you can't put them in a building that is cracked all over, and they always have to be looking at the ceiling. They're scared, you don't know if it's going to fall down. And so the recommendation was to break down the building and to build a new building. So there were a lot of issues with St. Jude's. We continue to articulate that to the St. Lucian public, and we want them to appreciate that the decisions we were making was in the best interest of the health care of St. Lucia.
Oh, yes. Viewers and listeners, you're on to Constituency Vibes. The number to call is 456-0931. My guest this evening, Mrs. Nancy Charles, Director of Implementation for the government. And this is where the program, we bring you and inform you what is happening on Constituency Vibes in that regard. So feel free to call in and to share your views. And as we say, let us do this with care and respect for others as we call and share our viewpoints. Yes, so Nancy, we were saying that the government is working throughout the length of breadth of St. Lucia. People can see the quality of work. And I think there's a particular emphasis on the quality of work. And while we're talking about implementation, the United Workers' Party government, led by the Honorable Alan Shasley, in its visionary approach, its commitment and its dedication, to me in the past, 20 years or ago, in a term, if one road or two, little things were done, that was it. I mean, you look at Sufra, I mean, the extent of work, I mean, taking it to that kind of level of implementation, of care, of concern, of developing St. Lucia, to the point that people, even recognize the place. I mean, have a lot of people, when they visit Sufra, I mean, I have a friend of mine who is from the other side, and he tells me that, and of course, he's an older person, lives in the States, and he says, look, this is Ricky, look, he came for Christmas year before, and he said, look, I have been there in the struggle, and all I wanted to see was an improvement and a difference in my country. I was on the other side, and I was working hard to push for that to happen. And he's amazed at what he's seeing under the United Workers' Party government?
Well, Ricky, I can certainly tell you one thing that comes to mind, and I think I may have mentioned it sometime this morning, is without a vision, the people perish. And Prime Minister Alan Shastney, with his cabinet of ministers, have always had a vision for St. Lucia. And if there's one thing that Prime Minister emphasizes in everything that we do, and you can see throughout the country, that whatever it is that we do it to international standards. St. Lucia, sometimes we're so used to, in terms of the term, vitae, just doing things anyway, anyhow. And he's one who believes...
Can we hold a minute, caller?
He's one who also believes that if you're going to spend the people's money, spend it in terms of good value, ensure that people get value for money, and ensure that when you are completed, people may want to criticize you for it, but they cannot criticize the project. So in terms of Soufre, for example, when you look at the square, people did criticize the administration for stopping the work on the square. But when the Prime Minister and Minister Herod did the initial walkthrough in terms of the square, and they saw what is it that was being proposed, they both said, this is not what Soufre is. This is not what represents Soufre. And I'm sure everybody who walks through Soufre will appreciate that he did the right thing. They did the right thing to stop the project, go back to the drawing board, and to give the people of Soufre something that is more reflective of them, more reflective of the community, something that is more of international standard as well. And so we're just used to just having things done in a haphazard manner. We're not used to having visionary leadership and looking at the future. We always like perhaps to look at just from our face, as the people say, just a DPO. You know, we need to start looking forward. And that is the forward thinking that the Prime Minister brings to the table and brings to St. Lucia. And I can certainly tell you, Ricky, if there's one thing I can tell you, the young people absolutely love him. Because young people are visionary. They like to go forward. They like to do things to international standard. And if we're going to look at American culture, British culture, perhaps and imitate maybe the clothing and the style, etc., let us also imitate the standards that they do things to. Let us also want to get our country to that particular standard. So when an international visitor comes, they feel they're at home, right at home, because we have that international standard. And we can do it.
Absolutely. One of the criticisms that we have gotten from the other side in the vision and the planning was that we are putting a lot of renderings. We just putting up pictures. But now people can see on the ground. I mean, in Soufre, in the mini stadium, when we look at the sports infrastructure program, that's all you heard from the other side.
I can't wait to hear what will be the feedback from the opposition when the mini stadium is fully completed. I think we're almost at 90% in terms of just a few pieces of the track is remaining. And perhaps we're starting on Mikud as well. So persons who traverse the road would be able to see the impact of that project. I know initially the criticisms from the Labour Party has been, oh, Don Lockerbie, not even knowing exactly what this means, and they just repeat the same thing over and over again. But you and I have a greater appreciation perhaps of the project, and that is, again, it speaks to the visionary leadership of Alan Shastney. So I'll just give you a little background in terms of especially the funding. Every year, we receive funding in terms of grant funding from the Taiwanese government. And they make an allocation, whether it be 10, 11, $12 million for grant funding to the government. And the Prime Minister continues to say, when we get that money, what is it that we have substantive to show for that grant funding? If you tally it within 3-4 years, you would have had $32 million, for example, from the Taiwanese government. And what is it that you have to show for that?
Good evening, caller. We'll take a break there. Welcome to Constituency Vibes. Go ahead, caller.
Good evening, caller.
Yes. When you're concerned, concerning Shimenu, I don't think we can parler about we don't have a
Lodi Shimenu, qui côté okakuye?
Belleville Avier 4.
Côté?
Belleville Avier 4.
Aha, côté à Belleville.
N'a parlé concerning Shimenu.
Okay.
Oui, because moi je suis concerné.
Luka Kuto?
Ok, bon. Because now I put là, et nous qui m'ont fait supporter nous supporter à la place là, nous tous c'est à Christien. But Ministry of Health Constituency. But no pala she agricole. So much carry to when I help because really bad. Machine because you can complain to my baba, but you just can't say it for no. Which no can appreciate. So since I'm not ready with it, so much
OK. Merci apil. Vous pouvez écouter. Madame Nancy, qui répond.
Merci apil, caller, pour crier, pour dire nous about chimé vivre cela. Moi, savent, peut-être, un mois qui passé, Premier ministre là, passé tout partout, l'année passée. Juste avant Noël, peut-être un mois novembre, octobre. Et puis, il était passé, il était monté vivre cela, il était passé Belleville, il était passé en Guaspiro, tous ces côtés pour regarder ces chimées. Quand nous avons parlé, vous savez, peut-être pas de l'argent pour faire tout ça, vous voulez faire. Et peut-être dans un seul thème, peut-être dès l'année, vous pas assez l'argent pour faire tout chimé. Parce que comme on dit, la chimé, cette licité mauvais. Parce que tout chimé, tout partout est mauvais. Et puis nous pas ça fait tout en seul, mais nous remind Premier ministre là qui était passé chimé ça, et puis garder qui quantité relief, même si c'est des load by, ça l'argent si mec rouler, ou ça pour faire pli amenable pour mon passer en chimie, mais n'a by commission va au cola.
Okay, you're on to Constituency Vibes. The number to call is 456-0931 on 93.1 FM. You are also on GDV TV 115 on Flow, and so you can tune in and to share your views. Again, caller, we want to remind you, callers, when you are calling, please call with respect for fellow callers, members of the show, and the host. We want you not to just criticize and say bad things about people. You may disagree, but feel free to disagree, but without any insults or anything of that sort. Okay, so members in the diaspora, welcome to Constituency Vibes as well. We are indeed happy to have you. We know that you are listening, and so you get to know what is happening in St. Lucia throughout the length of breadth of St. Lucia, understanding the commitment and, of course, the kind of work of the United Workers' Party government. We have a caring government. We are bringing you the information about the various programs. In the health sector, what is happening in St. Jude's, our infrastructure. Again, we are clearly showing you our philosophy. This is not about giving people handouts, giving people a fish. We're teaching people how to fish. We're providing solutions. Are proud people. We want to work for their money so that they can earn their own upkeep, and they don't just want people to give them handouts. But where is necessary and is fitting under this COVID crisis, the government is providing social assistance and various kind of assistance programs to be able to ensure that we provide and support solutions in a holistic manner, in a manner that's sustainable, and in a manner that is equitable. And of course, Mrs. Charles, as we go, the work continues throughout the length of Belfast and Lucia. People are speaking. You can see the level of program. And this is why we have in these programs. And let us speak to the United Workers' Party has been criticized for its PR, about getting things. So I think we're making some progress. So
I think so. I think you, myself, and staunch United Workers' Party supporters know as well that has never been the strong point of the United Workers' Party. When we're in government, we do good work, we do a lot of work, but we are not very boastful about the work that we do. And that continues to be the psyche of the United Workers' Party. I think we're slowly growing out of it. It's a new generation, new set of membership, etc., coming into the United Workers' Party. But we've always been more or less reserved as opposed to the opposition, who's always been very aggressive, always out there. And as much as possible, we try to allow our work speak for itself as opposed to words speaking for itself. So I can certainly tell you, the Labour Party is a party of words. Oh, they speak all the nice languages. They know how to criticize. They know how to say all of this. But the United Workers' Party is a party of workers. We work. We do things. And so if you go around the length and breadth of St. Lucia, you will see the work of the United Workers' Party. You'll see the work of the parliamentarians. And I'm sure the various parliamentarians who's been on your show, the various parliamentarians who's been elsewhere, and people within the constituency. So whilst perhaps on social media, you get persons who say, where is the work? Show me the work. When you go in the constituency, when you get that appreciation from members of the various constituency who say to you, merci, merci pour chimer ça ou fait ban nous là, nous te ka machin là, vous, mais actuellement nous n'y chimer là. Merci pour canal là ou fait là, because tout droit te ka descendre devant la porte moi, et actuellement. Yes, we were. Yes, we were. But you see, the T-canal is one thing that the Prime Minister continues to remind us is to not take the little things for granted. For you, it may look very simplistic that you're just building a drain there. But to somebody who has their house, for example, in that area, and all the water continues to go underneath their house, it undermines the integrity of their foundation. For them, that's a big thing. And so sometimes we look at it as very simple. But when people come to you and they tell you, I need your help to build a little retaining wall, because when you look at where their house is built and you look at where all the soil is being eroded when it rains, it's important and critical that you assist them in putting a retaining wall. Now, persons might say, well, you like retaining wall, but at the end of the day, when you look at the circumstances sometimes of the persons in the community, sometimes they didn't have a choice but to build there. And sometimes they didn't have a choice because with the limited funding they got, maybe whether they took a loan or whether they built it from their own pocket, they just could not afford. And so as a caring government, you have to step up to the plate and to try and assist in these people saving their homes, because that's all they have, you know. And if you don't assist them in saving their home, then where else would they go? So you definitely have to look at the circumstances. And the United Workers' Party has always been a party that works on the ground. The Labour Party likes big, big projects. So they say to you, they build the stadium and they build this and they build that. The United Workers' Party has always been on the ground, doing projects that impact people directly.
Good evening, caller. Welcome to Constituency Vibes.
Yes, good night.
Good night to you.
The last conversation you had is exactly what I'm facing for the last 8 years. I'm living where I'm living here now, 20 years. But my neighbors who are Labour Party people, from the time they came in here, they make life real miserable for me. Exactly what was the conversation you had there is what I'm going through. The bottom floor of my house is rotten because the water of the community above me coming right in my front door. I've gone to court. They do some adjustments on the boundary, but all was not done. That's where the water is coming from. It still gets to my way. I am trying to get Mr. Champagne to come and visit me here because I am partially blind. And I cannot get to Mr. Ezekiel Joseph's office if somebody will take me there. So I've been asking Mr. Champagne to come and visit me here to at least see what I'm talking about, that I could get some help.
What area are you calling from, caller?
I'm calling from Kako Babono.
Oh, Kako Babono.
In Green Gold.
Okay. All right. Caller, how will we be able to reach you?
If you come in from Babono, going towards Bocage, as you come up the hill by the churches, the first left turn you would get in a little concrete road that the Labour Party built. And like saying that, I could tell you if you see how that is built, because all the water from above me, they have two gutters on the inside of the road, and one, no water doesn't go in it. The water is coming from at the back of the buildings and it's coming down straight at it. Okay. So the gutter they built is grass and bush that growing in it.
No.
Okay. Does Champagne have your information, caller? He has your number and contact?
I've spoke to him how many times? He has my number.
Okay.
I have his number.
Okay. Then we'll...
I talked to Sir Aaron Shaftney because, I tried to get some help, but he's not here.
Okay. Thank you for calling, caller. We'll follow up in that regard for you. And touch base.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Again, the other aspect of the T-Canal is that the economic aspect. Well, we were criticized for that. Small people are able to get, to be able to have an economic benefit from that. I mean, we grow local contractors. Speak to them.
I know that we've been criticized in the past in terms of contracts and people who, quote unquote, has no experience in construction, in being contractors. But as you rightly said, what you would appreciate is you've had a lot of persons who have become unemployed, perhaps as a result of the decline in the banana industry, perhaps a little bit of a decline in construction, and persons are looking for alternative means of employment. Obviously, on the Labour Party, you just go out and you give people handout, etc. But that's not the mantra. And so we're saying that we know we recognize that you would need the help, but we don't believe in just giving you the money. And so we identify what some of the needs are in the community. And because you are from the community, instead of bringing in persons from outside or from another area to come into the community, then you employ local people within the community. So that creates two things. It creates a level of ownership of the community in terms of the project, whether it be a drain, whether it be refurbishment of a school, whatever the project, it creates that level of ownership in the community. So persons have a greater appreciation for that particular project, and it also assists in building capacity. So you are retooling people, or you are repurposing perhaps their capacity in ensuring at the end of the day that they can earn a living, because Ricky, you would appreciate everybody in St. Lucia needs to earn.
Welcome, caller. Welcome to Constituency Vibes. Good night.
Hello, good evening, Ricky.
Good evening. How are you, sir?
Good evening, madam.
Good evening. Good evening.
Welcome, and it's nice to have you.
First, let me say that cabinet.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. We're listening.
The Alan Michael Shafty, Prime Minister, the Honorable Prime Minister, is the best in the world. Simply the best. And his cabinet, that dream team, excellent, man. You guys, I think they're the hardest working cabinet on the planet.
The Prime Minister
Thank you very
tries,
much.
yes.
Thank you very much, caller, for that.
And what I've been seeing, because I'm usually home every year, once, twice, sometimes. What I've been seeing, man, tell you something, all I could say is, wow, that's it, everything. I can't believe it, man. Listen, top, beyond international standards, man. I know that the Prime Minister has said that his benchmark is aiming for Bermuda and Singapore. And believe me, St. Lucia is well on its way. During the COVID period, a deadly virus, and that man can do, he and his country can do what he's doing in St. Lucia, and it's amazing, unbelievable. All I can say is congrats, and I take my hat off to you all, man.
Thank you. Thank you very much, caller.
Not only that, the man is like a Rolls Royce. He's a godsend. Because I personally believe if anybody else was under that pressure, anybody else, they would have folded.
Yeah, they would have caved it. Yes.
They would have caved in, man, before a doubt. This man is special. Very special, let me tell you. And let me tell you something. I had a couple of words with the Honorable Prime Minister. And I said some things to him. And he said to me, it's going to be better. It's going to be better. That was before he was Prime Minister. He said, it's going to be better than that. It's going to be better than that. It's going to be better than that. And you know something he told me? Something he said to me? Yes, you like that, but St. Lucians don't want that way. St. Lucians want to stay in the gutter, playing second field to Barbados, Jamaica, Trinidad, and those from Martinique and those countries all their lives. All their lives. What's wrong with St. Lucians? Look how Barbados do it, look how Trinidad do it, look how Jamaica do it. That's all. We got to go to Jamaica for this. We got to go to Trinidad for this. We got to go to Barbados for this. What's wrong with that, man?
Well, we're changing that, caller. We are changing that.
Silver, bronze, I like the gold, man.
Indeed.
We all do, caller. We all do. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for your support and your confidence in this administration.
Something, right? Sorry, Stadium. I was down there 1 year for the training of the soil for the terminal. I met this guy. This guy, he took me for a drive. To look at the racetrack. And I said to myself, while I was driving behind him, I said, hey, that man, if you want to take me and rob me. But I was really braced for anything to happen. He took me halfway up the hill to look down at the racetrack. Halfway up. And let me tell you something. It's a beauty. Beauty, man. Beautiful, man. Serious. It's simply the best, man. Barbados has a racetrack for over 109 years, 110 years now. Trinidad has 2 racetracks. I mean, Martinique and those places have racetracks. None of them are international standards. None of them are international standards.
Bigger, brighter, better, caller.
International standard is the only international racetrack in the Caribbean. And in case the Lucia don't know, horse racing is one of the oldest sports on the planet. Okay? And that brings in development. People come from all over the world, even from on the moon and all, if you want to go further. This band has the aim, this band has the goal that we are playing second fiddle. We no longer play second fiddle. So nobody else. We're going for the goal. We're going for the goal. So I tell you, he sets very high standards. I love this man. I love this man, man. Trying to this nonsense about Barbados. When you go to buy a school, you got to go through that. You got to do sick, you got to go to Bartley. Not gonna come. Not gonna be taking it fast, man. I'm taking it fast.
And we're working towards that, caller.
That come away. Nonsense is taking it fast. That Kenyan thing, them got to go. They need a 17 knot. A 17 love. I'm telling you, nonsense, man. Alan Shaw says, man, could you imagine giving that man 5 years, another 5 years or 10 years? We're going to pass, but you know, and we're going to pass Singapore. Well, it's because, and only that, let me say another thing. This man is loved and respected all over the world. He's a respected man. When you see the first world country respect you after your job is done. If you see they're against you and you're in the black book, I must stop your fight. The SLP is in the black book of the first world countries. In case you don't know it is a joke, the SLP is in the black book of the first world countries. And when you give a one of them, when you mess up with one, they all turn against you, especially England and America. When England tells America jump, America acts how high. When America tells England jump, vice versa.
All right. Okay.
Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, caller. And Ricky, if I may, I also want to remind St. Lucia, he touched on a very sensitive issue in terms of the racetrack. And that, again, is the vision. When Prime Minister Alan Chasney spoke to...
Kindly hold a minute, caller.
Spoke to what it is we wanted to accomplish in the South. And I clearly remember my good friend, my very good friend, Alva Baptiste, who indicated that not one block would be laid in the South because that was a pipe dream. Unfortunately, because of COVID, you've had everything as a standstill. But you recognize that whatever it is we say that we will do, we do. And so we were able to successfully have the racetrack. And if you pass through both Edgewood and Viewport, you would see the racetrack. We had our first race in December of 2019. Very successful, huge turnout. And these are the things that they say would never happen, but it did happen. And I want to remind St. Lucia, it's a proud accomplishment for us. Unfortunately, due to COVID, you've had a standstill, not only in St. Lucia, but everywhere in terms of racing and some of the activities that you can have that indicates that you can have social gatherings. So we've had certain restrictions on those, but I can certainly tell you that even if you remember, Ricky, we had something for independence in 2020, and then going into the pandemic, we were trying to do something for March, and then we now had to close down. But it is something that the United Workers' Party administration is very proud of, that we were able to make use of that land in the South in terms of the racetrack. It was there for years, Ricky. That's where I'm from. I passed there every day. Nothing was happening. And so we bought into that vision, and we're very grateful to the Prime Minister for his hard work, and grateful to the investor as well, Mr. Tio Akin, who came into St. Lucia, who had a vision and who executed that vision. So that's what I'm talking about when I speak about visionary leadership in terms of Prime Minister Alan Chasney, that, you know, he looks at the future. He looks at ensuring that everything we do, we're at an international standard and things that we can be proud of and that we can boast of in St. Lucia.
When you speak about investors, one almost gets the impression. Okay, let me put it this way. There's one thing to say, okay, there's a project, you have a certain point of view, maybe we should go this way and we should go that way. But there seems to be that kind of criticism of our investors and a negative approach to. Anyway, welcome to Constituency Vibes, caller. Good night.
Good night, good evening.
Good
Nancy,
evening.
how you doing?
Good evening, caller. I'm fine. I'm doing great tonight.
Awesome. Well, I'm just calling to, again, congratulate you guys. Basically, this is a really excellent program. And the good thing about the United Workers' Party is that they maintain the legacy of remaining focused and working in the interest of every single one, whether you're red or you're yellow. I say red first because, sometimes I always see like the red always power to criticize, but they're the ones benefiting the most.
Mm-hmm.
But
You're
again,
right,
let's
caller.
just remain focused. As we know that we have a theme, we are the workers. We're not anything else but to work in the interest for every solution that everyone can benefit at it all. And like you said early on, if you were to go from constituency to constituency, you would see the development of each constituency. And that's a good thing about the United Workers' Party. And like I want to also say, we need to continue our groundwork. We need to let the people, the citizens feel and know what we're going through. Let's see the ministers, see what's going on. Conversation, I know all that put the COVID and the protocol stuff, we need to kind of hold it down. But there are ways, means, social media, like I notice right now, you see flyers of what is happening, and that is what we need. The education part of what is being done so people can be in the know and not be like, hey, what's really happening? There is no PR. And I really want to congratulate you guys because I could see a lot is happening for the United Workers' Party. And furthermore, I'm being a teenager, and it's like so much like if I were to right now go cast my ballot, this is a clear cut. I am going to vote the United Workers' Party.
Well, thank you very much,
Thank you
caller.
very much,
I'm
caller.
very happy to hear that.
But like, say, for instance, when you listen to the Labour Party supporters, they're not convincing anyone to say, let me go that way, or this is the they basically cannot influence me being a young person as to what they're really trying to say. I don't get it. So I just want to congratulate you guys and just continue doing the work because the young people are paying attention to what you're saying. And just, again, I saw something about where I think Peter J.C. made a statement regarding the youth. We need to be careful what we say about the young people. For some reason, most likely, we're not mature to understand the statement. So we need to always be careful when we speak about the youth because the youth is going to make the United Workers' Party a better solution.
Thank you very much, caller, and I quite agree with you in terms of our focus. If there's one thing I can tell you that I also admire about the Prime Minister.
Just a second, caller. You still there?
Yes, I'm there.
Okay.
Yeah, that I admire about the Prime Minister is his focus. And so when sometimes a lot of things are happening, he looks at me and he says to me, Nance, focus. Let's not forget what our goal is. So let's not look on this side or on this side, but let's focus. And so I think it's one thing. I learn a lot from him, working with him, and focus is very critical. And I do appreciate your comments in terms of the youth because, I mean, we just don't want to continue to just pay lip service to the youth. We want to ensure that when we speak about the young people, that we put things and policies in place that impact and that allows young people to develop. And so, for example, Kola, I can tell you, it's one thing we tried as much as possible to ensure that there is access to funding because young people have a lot of ideas.
And
I mean,
in truth, yes, they actually the ones that would from now on direct what path the country goes.
Yes.
Because if we, for whatever reason, choose not to listen to the youth or get them on board, then we're going to actually be in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So when we speak, whatever we implement, it's supposed to be beneficial to us because there is nothing else. Right now, you get the people that's over the age of 35, I would class it to 65. They're either red or yellow. And no matter what you would do, whether you do a drain, whether you put food on the table, that is just where they stand. You need to stick with the youth and the middle class, I would say, and get us involved. Like, do stuff that we can benefit from it and get to the level of interaction, communication, educating. All of these things is a key sector whereby you could get the people that you really need to follow you so then we can make a difference. Because we all know no one else would definitely handle COVID like Alan Jackson is doing right now on his entire government. No one will be able to put all what he has done, because right now the only thing they can do is criticize what he has done because he's the one in the hot shoe. So it's like you could criticize what he's done, but if you were there, you would not know what to do. So at the end of the day, I just want to say kudos to you guys. Remain focused and keep to the theme of our party, which is the United Workers' Party. We're all about working, educating, implementing, and ensuring that it is successful at the end.
Wow, caller. I think I need to try and get in touch with you, because you would be a great PR and spokesperson for the United Workers' Party. Don't you think so, Ricky?
Absolutely.
She's very passionate, and she knows her stuff. But thank you very much, caller, for that level of encouragement. I only hope that this term in government and that the St. Lucian public recognize the level of work and what we have achieved. And that my appeal to St. Lucians tonight is to continue to support the United Workers' Party and to give us the opportunity to continue along that trend, to continue the work that we have started, to continue to develop St. Lucia to international standards, to continue to incorporate visionary leadership into everything that we do, and to ensure that we build a bigger and better St. Lucia. That has been the mantra and the journey that we've been taking St. Lucians on.
And I would say so that I believe you guys are on the right track.
Thank you.
You just need to, again, the continued education as to what you guys are doing. And for instance, I know for sure this party has been a party of transparency, where that everything they do is out there.
Mm-hmm.
You know that before the other party would be like certain things would have passed, signed, the beaches, etc. We would know nothing about it. And when you guys investigate, then you would be like, oh, this was signed as of 20 whatever or whatever. So at least you guys are on.
Hello, caller, you still there? Hello? I think we may have lost.
I think we lost her.
Okay.
But thank you very much, caller. Very in-depth contribution. And Ricky, this is the level of participation that we want from our people.
Good evening, caller. Welcome.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, there's a little question I want to ask Nancy.
Go ahead, caller.
Yeah, good night.
Good night. Good night, caller.
Nancy, I would like you to talk a little more about this audio lab or the airport.
The Ojo Labs.
Yes.
Okay.
Construction.
And the airport, yeah.
And the airport. Okay, so let me start with Ojo Labs.
Okay, hold on, caller. You will listen off air, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Caller, I'm very glad that you asked that question, because I continue to hear people saying Ojo Lab, as if there is a big scandal with reference to Ojo Lab. So essentially what Ojo Lab is an ITC center in terms of technology that they bring into the table. And so the proposal, when it was made to the government of St. Lucia, is to say, here, we have this project that we're doing in artificial intelligence. We want to bring that level of technology to St. Lucia. And the business partners who made that proposal, they had worked prior to coming to St. Lucia on another project. And they recognized that St. Lucians had the talent, and St. Lucians were very good when it comes to working the phones and when it comes to adopting to technology. And so the proposal was made to the government of St. Lucia to open this sort of center to bring in artificial intelligence to St. Lucia. And what they requested of the government was salary support for the St. Lucians that they would employ. So, caller, I want to say to you, the project incorporated Invest St. Lucia. If you're from the South, you know that we had all those factory shells where they had kosher meals and all those other factory shells, some of them in the South, they were just there bare. There was nothing happening. And so the Invest St. Lucia invested in the project by, one, fixing up the factory shells, bringing them up to standard. And so the factory shells remained that of St. Lucia. It remained that of Invest St. Lucia. And so they invested the money in bringing it up to standard. And then Ojo Labs people came in and they brought in the technology. They employed hundreds of St. Lucia. And there were two aspects to the project in terms of the salary. So when you hear people say, we gave Ojo Labs $30 million, that is not true, caller. The project only entailed that the government of St. Lucia would subsidize the salary of the staffing the St. Lucian staffing employed by Ojo Labs. In the first instance, for the first 6 months, we subsidized their salaries to $1,000. And every month thereafter, after the 6 months, we gave a subsidy of $500 towards their salary. So the monies that the government of St. Lucia was investing, that money was not going to the pockets of Ojo Lab, but that money was going in the pockets of St. Lucians. That money was ensuring that we would be able to employ hundreds of young St. Lucians. And I'm proud to say, I can say that to you as well, caller, that my daughter is working with Ojo Lab. She works from home right now, but I'm very proud of the work that they do. She's also very happy in terms of the program and what she's learning, etc. And I think a lot of St. Lucians, persons that I've spoken to, are very appreciative of the government in that level of investment. Now, that's where you speak to visionary leadership as well, because when an investor comes and they make a proposal, sometimes you expect them to come with everything, but they're saying, hey, I want to invest in your country. It is to the benefit of your country. Meet me halfway. Let's go into that level of a partnership. And I'm very grateful that the Prime Minister saw to it. The Prime Minister saw the impact that would have on the people, and especially the young people in the South. So we always give these stories about the impact of those young people who've never had a job, earning about $2,000 or $3,000. I think I have a son who's out of university right now, who's at home, getting ready to go out in the field of employment. And he says to me, Mommy, I don't understand. I'm so jealous of my sister. She's making so much money, working at Ojo Labs. I think maybe I should go to work to Ojo Labs. But the impact of that money, caller, on those young persons who are able to now contribute to their households, who are able to help their parents, perhaps. PM always give the example of this young person that when they got their first salary, the first thing they did, they went to Cots and they bought a TV. These are things we take for granted. Some of us have 2 or 3 televisions in our house, one in each bedroom, one in the living room, etc. But there are some households where these people don't have a proper television. Maybe they still have those little things. And so gaining that level of employment, getting that money into their pocket, gives them that level of independence. It gives them that level of, when we speak about teaching a man how to fish and not necessarily giving him a fish. So we're very proud of that project. We take ownership of the project. And caller, what I want to say to you, every time you hear the Labour Party or the opposition mention, Ojo Labs, tell them I am proud of that project, because this is a project that contributes towards hundreds of young St. Lucians being employed, persons who've never earned a salary before, and now they have an opportunity to earn a salary and to get a job. And it is the same thing with the ITEL BPO that just came on board as well. I think it was amazing and commendable that we were in the middle of a pandemic, for example, Ricky, and where you had a lot of countries, persons were now being unemployed, you were retrenching workers. We opened an ITEL BPO in the middle of the pandemic, and they were also able to employ a couple hundred St. Lucians into that sector as well. So we are creating employment. We are looking for opportunities for St. Lucians to ensure that they can work and that they can take care of their families. So we're very proud of this project, caller.
Welcome, caller, to Constituency Vibes. Good night.
Yes, good night, sir. I'd like to make a contribution.
Go right ahead, caller.
Okay, I really want to commend the United Workers' Party and Prime Minister Shastri for a very good job that he has done with the COVID situation. I mean, COVID, no government or no country or nobody actually in the world saw COVID coming. And with Alan Shastri, his first time in government as a Prime Minister, for his first term, never saw that, such a pandemic would have come. And he never thought of how he was going to handle it. And then it came upon him, for his first term, his first time in government as a Prime Minister, and he was able to move and handle things so well. So, I want to give this man, a gold plaque for the work that he has done. And I believe, deep within me that Mr. Shastri is the visionary for St. Lucia for the time. There is a season and a time for everything. And in the gospel, in the Bible, it says there's a time, there's a season for everything. I believe there was a time for the Kenny Anthony. I believe the time he came in was his time. Mm-hmm. He came in for a purpose, and there was a reason
But right now, there, I believe strongly, and I have my conviction in that our Prime Minister Alan Shastney is the man for the vision for St. Lucia right now. Just as way back in the 60s, you know, Sir John was the man with the vision. And no matter how much they fought him, he had the ideas, he had the patience, he had the time, he had the wisdom, he had what it takes, you know, to really took St. Lucia from nothing to what, till he was able to drop it. And so I really want to commend this man and his team. I want to, you know, acknowledge Nancy also, a very good friend of mine. And I'm a great, a big, mighty, strong, serious, real supporter of the United Workers' Party. I love their policies, I love their ideas, and I believe that, you know, he given another chance, and I know that God will give him that other chance because God is the one who put him there, that he will do what he has to do in the next term and beyond. Because I'm not looking at just another term, I'm looking at another term and beyond. Because he has some work to do that nobody right now in this country have that vision. He is the man with the vision. So UWP, United Workers' Party, continue to stay strong, continue to stay focused. And of course, I love the fact also that he is a man who acknowledges God as a believer, as I am. That is the kind of leadership I look for, a leader who acknowledges God, who believes that he's not there doing everything by his own and his own knowledge and his own thinking, but he acknowledges God. He goes to church, and he has come into my church many times, you know, and I mean, not often you see a prime minister, you know, enters a local church and sit down, you know, and enjoy the worship, and you know, you don't see that. And this man does that all the time. And if I may go on the other side, I cannot remember ever seeing, you know, anybody from the other side ever come in church, you know, and you know, there was no acknowledgement to God. You know, Prime Minister Alan Shastney, his inauguration was like a church conference, was like a church service. You know, he always wants somebody to pray for him. This is the kind of leadership we need in the land, because we are in tough times, we are in hard times, and I cannot acknowledge a leader who does not go to church. You don't see him with a family, you don't see him with his wife and his children. He's not I mean, I need to see a leader who is a leader in everything. So I commend Mr. Shastney and his team, and I say to them that stay focused on what God has what God has for them to do for St. Lucia, and I love them. I love the United Workers' Party, and I defend them all the time, anytime. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, caller.
Thank you very much, caller. Certainly I know this caller, and caller, you are spot on. St. Lucia, we're known, Ricky, predominantly as a Christian nation. And if it's one thing that the Honorable Prime Minister values a lot, is family values and his Christian faith. So, and before the other caller comes up, I also want to say I'm very grateful, Ricky, because we have thousands of St. Lucians who are praying.
Just hold a second, caller.
Who are praying for the Prime Minister and who are praying for the leadership of this country. And we do appreciate it. So I call on our prayer warriors to continue to keep us in your prayers, to continue to ask God to guide us, to give us the wisdom, the understanding, and the knowledge so that we can lead this country in the right direction. So we appreciate that very much, caller.
Thank you, caller, for your patience, and welcome.
Thank you, Ricky. Good night, Nancy.
Good evening, Honorable Minister.
Yes. I just want to take the opportunity to congratulate you on the work that you are doing as Director of Implementation, and to compliment Ricky on Constituency Vibes.
Thank you very much, Minister.
There's just one area that I wanted to pick up on, and I know you didn't have time to fully expound on it because of the other calls coming in. But that is the issue of Ojo Labs and what has actually transpired.
And I want to put that in perspective so that our people can understand. Back in the day, when Sir John led St. Lucia, when you had all of the factory shells built in Vieux-Fort, Hudson, and Denver, manufacturing was something that was outsourced to a lot of other places because places like China and Vietnam and Mexico and all of the other places that have now taken the lead in production and manufacturing in a lot of these areas did not exist to the extent that they do. And Sir John, in his wisdom, saw the need to build these factory shells and go out there and find investors because he now had a place to offer them, and they would just come in and set up shop and begin to operate. And where St. Lucia benefited was from the employment that was generated. We no longer can compete in that area, but in the area of call centers and telemarketing and all of these things is where we have a competitive advantage because of our proximity, the clarity of the English that we speak, the ability to be understood well enough by people from most other countries, because I believe that our English is a lot clearer to many other persons than you would find in maybe some of our neighboring countries. And so putting Ojo Labs into context is important. The Labour Party introduced a program where they were paying people to work in various businesses. And they ran that program for about 3 years or more. And as soon as the program ended, nobody kept the workers. So you just found that the government, and they were paying the full salary of these workers.
That was under the NICE project, Minister, yes.
That was under the NICE project. Under the Ojo Labs arrangement, what is the average salary of an employee at Ojo Labs?
Well, depending on the level, but at the basic level, some of the people at the beginner's level, they earn between $2,500 to $3,000 at the beginner's salary. And as they grow up to supervisor and managerial levels, they earn $4,000 or $5,000.
Somebody who's earning $2,000, that the government's contribution would just be about sometimes $500.
It's standard to $500, Minister. So the government's contribution is $500.
But the company itself would pay another
$1,500. That's correct.
Exactly. And that is what people need to understand. So when you look at the value of what we are getting now, you would have had to train these people adequately. And if you had the opportunity, if you had to pay to train these people, you would have had to pay more than the $500 for that period to train them. So what we have seen happening is that with Ojo Labs, these people are being trained. And while they are being trained, they are being paid. And
That's
the
correct.
government is contributing partly to that. And after a period of time, these people go and they become fully employed by Ojo Labs. Is that the case?
That's the case, yes, Minister.
So it is not something where after they are trained, they no longer, or when the government stops paying on or contributing to their salary, that they lose their employment. So that is the difference in the management and leadership of the United Workers' Party as opposed to that of the Labour Party. And then the people are developing skills that they can use in any other area in life. And so I think that is one of the great initiatives, and more so, it is in the south of the island. People must not forget that prior to Ojo Labs and ITEL BPO coming to Vieux-Fort under United Workers' Party government, any young person who wanted a job, generally, if they wanted a job in a call center, they would have to find their way up north, find some other house to stay. This UWP government has brought jobs to Vieux-Fort that never existed before. And that is where the Prime Minister has shown his commitment to the south of the island and to developing it adequately. And I wish we had 4 or 5 other Ojo Labs type of arrangements in St. Lucia, because it means that every young person who wanted a job in Vieux-Fort, Soufrière, Choiseul, Nicoud, as far as Dennery, would have been able to get a job. And I know that it is the aim of the government to increase the call centers in that area and well-paying jobs at that.
Yeah, Minister, you are very correct.
Pay much better than what you pay in the public service up to a certain grade. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. You are so correct in terms of that, and I can certainly tell you that prior to COVID, we had had a number of meetings with other potential investors with reference to call centers in the South. But unfortunately, we now had the impact of COVID, and some of them have been on a little bit of a standby. But we will actively pursue once we get the go-ahead to ensure that we can continue bringing that level of employment, especially to the South, on the western and eastern coast of St. Lucia, to digress a little bit away from the north.
Good night. Welcome, caller.
Hi, Ricky. Tinkley Francis here.
Oh, good evening, Mr. Chairman. Nice to have
How
you.
are you?
We're good.
Hi, Nancy.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Good. Nancy, I heard Minister Joseph added to what you said on the work. The work that we are doing down in Vieux-Fort. He spoke about the call centers, ITEL and Ojo. One thing we missed out. Would you invest in a country where the skill sets are not available? So
I certainly wouldn't.
Exactly. And one way of attracting people to your country is to make sure you have the skill sets available. So as an investor, I wouldn't put a cent in there if the people who I need to do jobs wouldn't come in. So in an effort to attract a company like Ojo Labs, who's investing in artificial intelligence, which is something new to the world right now, we had to show that we have the skill set. And to attract them was to subsidize in training the people. And we are not even paying 100% of the training. We are paying part of it. So it's an investment in the young people. And Nancy, as you alluded to, the fact that people are working and they're earning money. And the most interesting thing is that when ITEL BPO came in, the first cut, which is a Tier 1 employees, actually came from Ojo Labs. And that is the sort of opportunities we want for people in this country. When you lose your job or you decide to leave, opportunities must be available.
Oh, yeah.
You do not have to struggle to get another job. Right now, the limitation is the unavailability of space in Vieux-Fort for us. If we were in a position where we had facilities to retrofit, we would have at least 2 more call centers up and running right now. So what we have done is to continue to invest in purchasing real estate, to build more facilities down in Vieux-Fort, to bring in more call centers. And as we recognize call centers is the easiest way to mop up the unemployment. And we've proven that, right? So it's no secret that we purchased, I think it's about over 2 acres of land from Winera, property next to them. They had it for sale and made it available to anybody. We went in and we purchased it. And in the next year or so, we will build at least 2 more facilities, similar world-class standards, to what we are delivering with ITEL and OJO right now.
So thank you very much for that, Mr. Francis. And I think this is what we embrace as a United Workers' Party, in ensuring that we are creating opportunities. And I can certainly tell you, in also ensuring that you put the right person for the right job, Ricky. So I do have to commend Mr. Francis, because you would know that he's the chairman of Invest St. Lucia. And as an investor himself, as a businessman himself, he appreciates the impact of some of these perhaps level of investment. And I think he's also from the South as well. I think he hails from Swaziland. So he has a great appreciation in ensuring that we can direct and redirect some of our finances and some of our investments to the South to create those opportunities.
Yeah, certainly. And Nancy, as much as I am very passionate about the work that we are doing in the South as a Swaziland, but we do not focus all our attention to Swaziland and to the South. We also have a number of call centers up in
yes,
South
we do.
as well.
Yes.
So we have the Grow Resources. We have 1-800 Go Answer. And one of the things we have focused on is to try to go out there and identify call centers that are sort of up the value chain.
Mm-hmm.
So we try not to get to the bottom feeders, right? So we don't create sweatshops. We get into centers that equip the young people with skills. And as Minister alluded to earlier on, they learn something and they can move on and make them marketable. They can work anywhere in the world. So, for instance, 1-800 Grow Resources, they are doing something completely different to what all the other call centers are doing, right? So that is the level that we're looking for, equipping our people with the talent and the skill to make them competitive, right? They can leave St. Lucia tomorrow and work anywhere in the world, right? OJO Lab and what they're doing is world-class technology they're using. And if you can put that on your CV, you make yourself more marketable. So we are not just creating jobs, but we are creating value in the people who are employed.
Absolutely, and developing capacity as well.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
That is where we are. Yeah. But Nancy, I mean, thanks again. I mean, we have talent in Nancy as well, who is out there showing people what this government is doing, right? We have a team, a formidable team that is executing, and she with the her department, the implementation department, as you can see. You've never seen this before. She's augmenting what we have in the public service with the talent she brings to the table and making stuff happen. So, and Ricky, there's a lot more to come, you know. We have to go out there and support the government. I mean, COVID has put a damper on the stuff that we want to do, but as Nancy indicated before, coming back to the call centers, you know, nowhere in the Caribbean were they able to open a call center in the middle of a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And as a matter of fact, we are handing over to them another facility next week, right, where they'll be employing an additional 200 people again. You know, so we're moving.
Moving in a great effort. Great effort.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Francis and Ricky. You would appreciate that is why even in the middle of the pandemic as well, you would see that our unemployment numbers have gone down. So that speaks to the leadership and the management of this administration. Youth unemployment in particular has been something that we've been very concerned about from the time we were in opposition. And the focus of the Prime Minister has always been to bring initiatives to the table that will assist in bringing down the unemployment level, especially amongst our young people.
Nancy, let me add to the call center story. I don't see that often. And when, after the elections, I was still in Guyana. When PM came to Guyana to the CARICOM meeting, we met. And I was working at the largest call center in the world in Guyana, Teleperformance. And then we met, I made an arrangement for PM to meet the CEO and to begin that kind of initiative in terms of how, so I can see the trajectory, I can see the effort in terms of, and the call center, as we say, it's a great opportunity, great skills, great technology, the largest, the biggest Fortune 5 companies have a lot of work that you get through the call centers, and our people get skills and so forth. Listeners, you're on to Constituency Vibes, and time is flying so quickly, and we are just wrapping up our our program this evening. And I have the pleasure of having Mrs. Nancy Charles with us, the Director of Implementation. And so as we wrap up, Nancy, let me just give you an opportunity to close.
Well, let me say
remarks.
thank you very much, Ricky. I'm hoping that I can get another opportunity to come again, because there's so many things that we need to talk about and things that we need to touch on. But it was a pleasure being here tonight, trying to explain to St. Lucians and perhaps trying to do a bit of the PR that we've been lacking in letting St. Lucians know what we have been doing, where we're at in terms of our administration, and allowing our work to speak for itself, and also making an appeal to St. Lucians to continue to support this administration, to support the work of the government. I have to say, as Pinkley alluded to and Minister Joseph, that this is something that's unique to government in St. Lucia in terms of having somebody responsible for implementation. And I think it was because the Prime Minister saw in me the type of individual I am, the talent and the skill set that I possess, in saying, listen, I need you to focus on implementing. We need to implement those projects. We need to make it happen. I must say thank you very much, because I've had a wonderful relationship with the various technical persons within the various agencies. There's a level of mutual respect that we share for each other, and a great level of cooperation with those public servants. So notwithstanding that everybody understands that I am a political person, I do love my politics. I don't know that for a while I will give it up, but I also exhume a level of professionalism. I respect persons in terms of their capacity, and I don't see anybody on a political level when it comes to my work with government. It's always about the work, about the job, and ensuring we're doing what is best for the country. So I have to say thank you very much to them for that. St. Lucia, these are challenging times, but I want to let you know that your government is very cognizant of that. We have in us a cabinet of ministers who's also very cognizant of that. Every day, they try as much as possible in their efforts, in their deliberations, in their policy positions, to look after the interests of St. Lucians, to ensure that we continue along the lines of a government that cares about people, and that all the policies and the projects and everything we do, it's about ensuring that we create that level of independence in St. Lucians, to get people to feel independent, that they do not have to be dependent on a politician for anything, but that they can now go out there and be independent. So this is where we're at. This is what we stand for. Challenging times, as the Prime Minister indicated last night in terms of COVID. Ricky, you would know there's a curfew in place, so thankfully I have a pass, so I hope I don't get arrested and stopped on the way down.
I have a pass as well.
But St. Lucians, I just want to make a special appeal. As the theme for independence speaks to, we can and we will. So let us all put our minds together. Let us all come together as St. Lucians. Let us do this. We can reduce the number in terms of our COVID, in terms of the response. Let us be a bit responsible in our actions, in all we do. Let us think of each other. Let us think of our family, and let us rally together to ensure that we can do what is best for our country. Because at the end of the day, irrespective of our political biases, Ricky, we all are St. Lucians, and we live here, we work here, we stay here. And so at the end of the day, we need to make the decisions that is in the best interest of St. Lucia. So thank you very much for having me. And I'm hoping that some other time we can come. I know time is flying. So it's 10:24. I'm not too sure what time I'll get to my home in Viewfort, but it's all in doing the work of St. Lucia.
Thank you very much, and it is a joy to have you. I appreciate the fact that you are here with us this evening. So St. Lucians, thank you again once more. Members in the diaspora, St. Lucians listening at home as well, and viewing through GDV TV 115 on Flow. This is our program, Constituency Vibes. Next Wednesday, we have with us the Honorable Member from Miko North, the Minister of Education, Honorable Gail Phillips, will be here with us. And as I end, let me just say that in Soufriere, we are doing some work on the PMA. We have a program Restoring the Pride. And for the February program, the 1st of February, we had addressed by the Minister. On the official launch on the film, we had that song by Arthur and the Pitons. The 14th of February, we have a Piton Independence Soufriere Bay launch. And the 16th year commemoration of inspection ceremony. On February 18th, we have Restoring the Pride audio package, unveiling the PMA signage, launch of the Friends of the PMA, And 24 February, you have the Peter World Heritage Fashion Week concept and the PMA World Heritage Store concept. So a lot is happening, and Minister Rigobert will be speaking in that regard and a lot more as well. So thank you again, St. Lucia. It has been a joy and pleasure. Please follow the protocol. Yes. That's important. Yes. For us to follow the protocol to ensure we bring those numbers down so we do what we have to do. So everybody, let's play our part and let's be responsible. So thank you once again, and it is a joy and pleasure. And please be safe.
Prime Minister Honorable Alan Chastney has issued a rallying call to all St. Lucians amid the most trying time for the nation. The Office of the Prime Minister has launched the Mask On Challenge COVID edition. The national competition is geared toward not only stimulating creative interest in mask designing, but importantly, getting St. Lucians to wear masks in the fight against COVID-19. The wearing of masks, the World Health Organization advises, protects against respiratory droplets from someone when they talk, cough, or sneeze. These droplets expel into the air and evaporate into fine particles that may linger. The mask traps these droplets before they can evaporate.
In fighting COVID, it's the singularly most important thing because we know that it works.
The Mask On Challenge coincides with the observance of the island's 42nd independence anniversary. Honorable Chastney says the nation is at a critical crossroad with the pandemic shaping a new reality for St. Lucia, and as such, every St. Lucian must join the national effort to ensure the island emerges better than before. The theme for this year's independence is a resilient nation, we can, we will.
And I think the same way that we raise a flag is the same way we must understand that this independence, we must wear a mask. So from people who do it because they love their mother or they love their siblings or they love somebody who is not so well in their own household and they're doing it to protect them. But most importantly, we do it because we love our country. And you know, COVID has taken away all the things that we love.
Wearing masks along with hand sanitizing and physical distancing are simple measures proven to protect against the coronavirus. And the message is heightening in St. Lucia. There has been tremendous response to the Mask On Challenge, with scores submitting TikTok videos. Details on the Mask Challenge can be found at maskonchallenge_SLU. From the Government Information Service, Lisa Joseph reporting.
Next week, you may hear something about COVID because we held up this afternoon. Because when they come sooner than later and say something about COVID, you will know that they are lying. You'll see what happens when the party puts its might behind a protest. And that's why we call everyone to join us, because then you will see what the party's might is all about.